travel with His Holiness Kadamba Kanana Swami for 2 straight years. In the beginning, it didn't look that it will be so. It was, so you could say it was a shaky start because this COVID came in between, and it looked like we will never travel again. I'm sure some of you had the same feeling that this travel is not over. They put us in concentration camps, and that's it. We will never be able to associate with the Glories anymore. It's over. But then somehow or other, the rules kind of slackened, and then I had the opportunity to again travel with Maharaj. And this opportunity came to me in August 2019, when I just finished high school. I'm from Europe, so in Europe you finish school in end of May, beginning of June. So this was during my vacation. It was Janmashtami time, and Maharaj used to come to Slovenia every year for Janmashtami. And the interesting part of this whole start of my serving Maharaj was that before that actual invitation by Maharaj, I actually never spoken a word to him. I've never spoken a word to him before. And he has been coming to where I'm from for the past, 8 years. We'd be there twice a year. But I was just, growing up, first I was a small boy, then I was a teenager, and so on. But we never spoke, to each other, anything at all. I would just be there during these kirtans and holy name festivals or whatever, and I would just be trying to keep up with my playing mridanga there, and he would sort of tolerate my not being able to follow. Because for his style of kirtan, you had to be a really strong mridanga player and had a lot of stamina in order to keep up. So, he sort of tolerated me, and sometimes give me encouraging gestures or encouraging looks. Sometimes his looks would be kind of scary, but I didn't mind them because I knew what they were about. So sort of knew that Maharaj was not actually hating me on the spot, but he was just trying to encourage me to keep up with him. And it was quite difficult, but as I got older, it became sort of easier and easier, I could say, where I got more understanding as to how to actually do it. And that particular year, I was sort of grown up already. I was almost 19 years old. And I thought to myself that, well, now it's time, to actually become serious also in my Krishna consciousness. And for that, I knew that I will have to eventually accept a spiritual master. But, as a child, I grew up in a devotee family among devotees. I saw all the Swamis, all the gurus around. They would come, and also on the internet I would see them. And my parents are Radhanath Swami disciples. We would listen to his lectures a lot. But for no particular guru, any kind of desire to surrender my life to them didn't arise, But then something interesting happened, because I developed this desire to offer some service to Kadamba Swami. And at that time I just thought, okay, I just want to play mridanga for him, I want to be the one to play Mridanga, and I want to survive, you know. And because before that, with Harinam Ruchi would every year come also for Janmashtami, because Maharaj used to go for Harinam on Janmashtami day, and he would make the whole festival very lively. So they also used to come to Slovenia for Janmashtami to celebrate Janmashtami with him. And with Harinam Ruchi, I'm sure some of you remember him, traveled an American brahmachari, now he's married, but his name is Ananta Gauranga. He's an African-American body, and he was a really good Mridanga player. He still is a really good Mridanga player. And he used to always play with Maharaj because he had a lot of stamina, but he also had a lot of skill on the Mridanga. So he would play, and he would play forever, and he would never get tired. So as a kid, I always used to look at him and look up to him in that regard, And he also looked cool because he was black. And because he was in Safa. And that was like the combination. I was like, oh. But I learned that year he will not be coming, it's 2019, Janmashtami, that he will not be there. So I was thinking, well, I sort of learned from him just by watching him how he plays. I can sort of be the poor man's version of it, So that kind of desire kind of arose in my heart. But it was not just that. I also had a thought that I would somehow serve him, like personally. And I just, kind of set that thought aside because I thought, anyway, I just want to do the Mridanga part. And anything else I didn't think was possible. So I did the Mridanga part, and I did it pretty good, but I almost broke my hand as well. Because it was very much intense, even though I could keep up this time. But my hand was not, and there were no calluses like you see now. Now this is all callous. And I guess my bones were not strong enough, they were not used to such intense playing for so long. So, my hand got swollen like this, and even a week later it still hurts to play Mridanga. But somehow or other, I think Maharaj either noticed that or, through Paramatma knew that I already wanted to render some service to him. So after the festival, he sort of indirectly invited me to his room. He said it during the class, but he said it directly to me also, so everybody kind of was pushing me afterwards. So I decided, okay, I'll go. And then it so happened that he had a group of his disciples in front of him in a semicircle, and he was asking everyone what they are doing in their lives. And everyone would tell him, and then I was the last one in that semicircle. And he asked me, and then I said, well, I just finished high school. I don't have any plans as to what to do next. I'm taking a gap year. And then he looks at me and says, well, why don't you come with me to New York? And that was the first thing he actually said to me. And I was like, wow, what will I do in New York? I don't want to go there as a tourist. It doesn't attract me, this tourist life. And he said, well, you will be my personal servant. And that was kind of a magical story. So, it's like, because, I didn't reveal that desire to anyone. But he sort of, read my mind, or sort of, he understood that I had that desire just before this whole Janmashtami festival happened. And so then I said, wow, yeah, I just have to ask my father about it. I'm sure you'll be happy about it, but still I want to make sure that everything, I have his support. And he said, yeah, sure. So then I spoke to my father. Of course, my father was very much happy about it. And then Maharaj said that he wants to speak to my parents also about it. And so they came the next day, and then he was talking to my parents, and he saw that my mother was nervous. I told this story the other day, so some of you already know this, but most of you don't. And then Maharaj, to sort of calm her down, he said, "Don't worry, I will feed him." And then my mother looks at him and said, "You don't know how much he eats." And then Maharaj, just before he left this world, he was talking to me and he said, "Well, I didn't know how much you ate." And then he said, "But I fed you well." And I said, "Yes, you did." Yeah, so then he said, well, in New York, he said this will be a test month and so on. And I did go to New York with him, and it was a lot of fun. I got trained up by one of his old servants who was also there at that time. And then at the end of that month, he said, well, if you want to do this again, just give me a call. So basically, as soon as I came home, I gave him a call and I wanted to do it again. And he said, yeah, no problem. And then after about 2 months, I joined him again for the Radhadesh Mellows. And then we did a tour of Scandinavia and England, and then we ended up in New York again. And we just ended up in New York when the COVID started to sort of creep into the Western world from China. And then we sort of saw that maybe all this travel will sort of be hampered, it will not go on so smoothly anymore. So he decided he'll fly to South Africa because that was his plan. So he went there a week earlier, and somehow or other South Africa has a problem with the country that I'm from, because all the countries around Slovenia, they don't need a visa for South Africa. But I need a visa, so I had to go back to my country, and I tried to get a visa, but at that time everything got shut down. So then we got separated with Maharaj for a whole year. And then somehow or other, I was fortunate enough to again travel with him. And then at that time, because of this whole COVID thing, we were just driving around with the car. And we would go everywhere with the car. And usually I would be the one driving for the most part, and then Maharaj, he would also drive for 2-3 hours. We would do like 9-hour drives or 10-hour drives. And at that time even he had blood pressure problems. So on top of everything, he would still travel so much. And I very much liked those drives because it was the most, it was the longest time I ever spent with him, just us two in a closed space, and it was quite intimate actually, those drives. And one time we were in Croatia, and we were staying at one sort of bungalow that was owned by the devotees. And then this devotee, she made some samosas for us for travel. And we were traveling from Dubrovnik back to Zagreb, which is like a 5-hour drive. So she made some prasadam for us. Those samosas were filled with cherry jam. Very good samosa. And then I was driving, and we had this pastime with Maharaj, and whenever we would drive, we would never stop for eating. We would eat while driving. So everybody would, we would just start driving, and after like an hour or half an hour of drive, we would go, so what's for this? What's for prasadam? What's the snacks? Let's check it out. So I would be driving, and then Maharaj would feed me. He would pass me the prasadam. And then I said to Maharaj, well, you know, sometimes I tell this story to my mother, and she says she becomes very uncomfortable because then she thinks that instead of me serving him, he is serving me. And then he said, well, she doesn't know anything. He said, well, I'm giving you this prasadam, but that's because I don't want to stop. So this is more convenient for me to give you the prasadam instead of us stopping and swapping and just staying somewhere and just taking prasadam. His java was always quite intense, so he never wanted to stop. So he passes me this samosa, right, with cherry jam. And I take a bite. But then from the other side, because it was quite liquid, it started to leak. And so I'm driving with my left hand. And mind you, this car was not an automatic. It was a stick shift. So my whole hand is now dirty from this cherry jam. And you know, I had a brilliant idea, which was actually very stupid. I turned the samosa around and I beat it on the other side. So now I had two huge holes. And then the next bite was just the whole samosa popped in my mouth. So my hand was full, you know, just oozing with cherry jam. And then at that time we had with us also my friend, Jagannath Sutta, and he's also from Slovenia, so I knew him for a long time. So then Maharaj turns around, he was in the back seat, and Maharaj said, give me a wet tissue. So he makes a tissue wet, and then he passes it to Maharaj, and he takes my hand, and with this tissue, he just cleans all my fingers, like this, very much. And my hand was clean, so I couldn't clean my hand, and I had to drive, I had to shift the gears, you know. So like this, Maharaj was not at all mental about it, you know. He was always just like, well, what needs to be done needs to be done. So I was like, okay. I was sometimes also uncomfortable while he was doing that. But at one point I was like, okay, yeah. Just surrender to what he wants, you know? And try not to be stressed out that he has to do something for you. So then we would drive like this all around Europe. And then eventually we came to Mayapur, France. And at that time, there was a Kirtan festival there. And Maharaj, he was going really hard because, you know, this was like one of the first gatherings of devotees. There was many devotees coming around. And so many devotees came to see him, and he was giving them his time, he was spending time with them. He was very busy. And still he had this blood pressure problem. And then it was the last day, he was supposed to sing twice in the day. He had two slots. First one was like an hour long, and then he was supposed to close it off with the last kirtan of the festival, which was at like, I don't know, 6 o'clock or 7 o'clock at night. So he did the first slot, and then he was just talking to devotees all day, took a little break for lunch, and then again talking to devotees. And he comes to me sort of like an hour or 2 hours before his final kirtan, and he says, I don't know if I'll be able to do it, you know, because my blood pressure is so high and now I don't feel good. And I said, well, Maharaj, did you take any rest today? And he said, no, I didn't. I said, well, first take some rest and then you will see how it goes, you know. Because I knew Maharaj, and I knew that if anytime he says that he's not doing something, usually it turns out that he will do it, and with great intensity also. So, you know, and I also wanted that second kirtan to happen. So I was like, just take some rest, you know, you didn't rest. And then I see him come out of the castle, because the Mayapur is like a castle, not just some front. He comes out of the castle about like an hour and a half later or something like that. And he comes up to me and he says, "Go get me some fishermen friends." And I knew what that meant. I said, "Oh, so your blood pressure is okay now?" And he said, "Yeah, well, I popped some blood pressure pills, which he had to take anyway, every day." And he said he went to sleep. And when he woke up, his blood pressure was normal. And I said, "Well, that's great." And I brought him this blood pressure medicine, this fisherman's friends. And then he did this crazy last kirtan, like he only does. And I was playing drum, and then Sachinandan Swami, he was sitting next to him because he was also there. And then what happened was that all these French devotees, they went crazy, they went wild, and they started sort of wrestling with each other and rolling on the ground, and, you know, and basically playing rugby with each other. And Maharaj looks at Sachinandan Swami, who is known for more meditative kirtans, and he looks at him and he was like, "This was not what I intended to do. This is not my fault," you know. They started to go crazy. But Sachinandan Swami had this blissful smile on his face, and he also enjoyed it very much. He was just playing kartals there. It was just fun. You know, through the whole festival, actually, Sachinandan Swami was always just, every time Maharaj had the kirtan, he would sit there and just play kartals and observe what's happening. Yeah. So this was one of the interesting parts of our European travel. And then we traveled to South Africa. And this is also, you know, one of the interesting parts of how he just always was fully absorbed in doing kirtan. And this was his first visit after COVID had started, so in like about a year and a half, this was his first visit to South Africa. And actually, I think he was the first Swami to come again to South Africa after COVID. You know, they had a few Swamis in South Africa, but he was the first one coming from outside South Africa. And in South Africa, everybody still had this lockdown stuff. You know, everybody, all the temples were kind of still in lockdown mode, and they were trying to do social distancing and masks and everything like that. So then we came, and Maharaj said, "Well, I'm not coming if I'm not doing anything, you know, like fun." So he organized the Ratha Yatra, a whole new Ratha Yatra, you know, it's still going on now in Centum. And this Ratha Yatra was supposed to be a day after Gurpurnim. So it was Gurpurnim and then Ratha Yatra the next day. So Gurpurnim is already an intense festival. And then we did Ratha Yatra. And so we did, Ratha Yatra was quite hot day, summer was in South Africa at that time. And Johannesburg is known for, you know, the desert and quite high altitude. So it was quite hot. And then, you know, we were already tired from the previous day, Gurpurnim. And then Maharaj went crazy in the procession. And then we came back for the festival side, and he talked to people, did some questions and answers and so on. And he took some little bit of rest, not too much. And he was supposed to do also this last kirtan. And he did it. And already for the Panchatattva Maha Mantra, he already started going fast. He just sang, you know, Prabhupada's Pranam mantra slow, and then one or two Panchatattva mantras, you know, sort of normal beat, and then from the third Panchatattva Mama, he was already pumping, you know. And that went on for almost 2 hours. It was just, everybody went mad in that kirtan, you know. Maharaj orchestrated stage jumping as well. This stage was not so high up, it was maybe half a meter up. So we were not so much separated from people. But then, you know, in Africa there was this devotee named Jambavan. And he, as the name describes, he was quite big. And we had also Harinamananda, who is very well known for his jumping and dancing abilities. And there was another devotee who's also a very good dancer in South Africa. He's also African. His name is Prem Vikash. So Maharaj, he saw these three on stage, and he decided that he wants all three of them to jump off the stage. So first he got Harinamananda to jump, and he had this, you know, very artistic, athletic jump off the stage. And Maharaj was also amongst the devotees that were catching people. So he orchestrated the whole kirtan so that somebody else would lead temporarily and so on. And then Prem Vikas jumped, and he overjumped. So he kind of almost smashed his face on the other side. And then it was Jambavan's turn, and he was like kind of singing in between also. And then he's also a good actor because he is a disciple of the walking Swami. Bhakti Marg Swami, yes. So Bhakti Marg Swami is also known for making his dramas and all that kind of stuff. So he's his disciple. Now he's acting on stage, right? He's singing, and he sees that they want him to jump also. So he kind of starts stretching on stage, you know. He has to stretch before his jump. And all the devotees are like, no, don't jump, don't jump. And Maharaj's like, no, yeah, you have to jump. And then, well, Jambavan, he jumped, at least. He jumps off stage. And then, well, it was quite successful, but he didn't jump enough, so he almost, jumped a little bit too little. And it seemed like he almost jumped fully on the hands of Maharaj, because they were holding arms, and then they would jump on those arms of the devotees. And then Maharaj kind of played along, and he pretended that his back went down. He's like, oh. But then, everything was fine. So that was that crazy kid. I was just observing everything because I was the drummer, and I was always the drummer. And all the devotees other than me, they were all switching, doing this and that. I was just there for the drum. I was quite ecstatic also. And then, so this was 2 in 10 days I was finished, And I was staying in the sort of same apartment as Maharaj did. And then in the morning, I think it was around 5 o'clock or something, Maharaj just comes into my room and says, okay, Nitai, get up. Time to get up now. I was just fully exhausted. These previous 2 days were crazy. Because I had to get up because we were going to another place, another Harinam. We wanted to do a Harinam in Soweto, which is a township, southwest township of Johannesburg. And this is a very much black area, and Maharaj likes to preach to Africans, the native Africans, the black Africans, you could say. And so he wanted to go there because otherwise he wouldn't have time in his South African visit to go to Soweto. So this was the only day he could go. And he was full of energy. I was just like dead, And he goes, he was chanting up and down his japa. He said, I already walked 7 kilometers today. Just get up, why are you so lazy? And I was doing this, at that time I was doing this exercise which is called a Tabata, which is like you have to do It's very intense, very much cardio exercise, right? So previous day I did it, and Maharaj was like, observing me, and he was like, okay, this is interesting. It's quite intense. And I said, yeah, it kind of keeps me fit and gives me energy also. So I guess, he noted it. So this next day he says, come on, do your exercise. I said, I'm too tired, to do that. I said, I don't want to do it, I'm too lazy. No, it gives you energy, you have to do it. To wake you up. So okay, Maharaj. So I did it, I went through the motions. It still, was true that it gave me some energy, but I still wasn't like up to, full 100%. I was still like on 60% only, It went from 55% to 60. So I was exhausted. But then we, I don't know what time was it, but it was around 8 o'clock, I think. We went to Soweto, and then we were there first in one devotee's house. He was just had a meeting with the devotees there. And I was just sleeping in the room. And then there was Harinam, that was also his name. So this is already after 2 days of intense kirtans and Harinams and Ratha Yatra and Gopram. And then after we did that Soweto Harinam, he went straight to a whole different town, which is like on a totally different opposite side of Johannesburg. You have to drive like an hour and a half to get there. He went to Pretoria and did a Sunday feast there. And that was another killer, from there. It was just barely, I don't know how I changed my mind. I kind of did it. Somehow or other. And then next day we flew to Durban. So then one interesting phenomenon happened in South Africa was that just after we left all these places that we visited, everybody got sick with COVID. And we kind of were just escaping just in time before everybody got sick, right? So first in Johannesburg, everybody got sick after that Ratha Yatra. Then, we came to Durban, we were kind of like thinking, we got kind of lucky, we escaped. Then we left Durban after about a week of programs and, being with the devotees. We flew to Cape Town, and then we started hearing the news how everybody in Durban got sick now. And then Maharaj said, well, I guess I popped their bubbles. I was really happy about it. I popped their isolation bubbles. He said it was time. They never went out, so that's why they got it now. We are fully immune. We never got sick with COVID. And then, in regards to COVID, we had to take all these, PCR tests or just those quick tests. And, we always tested negative, obviously. But there was a few times that Maharaj was convinced that this time we're going to test positive. Right? Because sometimes I'd have a runny nose, or I would be kind of under the weather. And I was like, well, maybe, let's see. And every time it came back negative as well, right? And Maharaj, we were in India already at that time. He said, Nitai, he had like 10 false negative tests. They would say sometimes they're false positive, sometimes they're false negative, right? He said, Nitai had like 10 false negative tests. I said, well, how, We did it so many times. It's like sometimes it would have to be positive. If it was positive, it would be positive. Nah, it just had false negatives. We had a lot of fun. And the most intense kirtan he did actually in that time period there were two actually. There was the one for New Year's from 2021 to 2022. And for that one, he did it for 2.5 hours straight. And he went slow for 2 minutes and 45 seconds. And then after that, pneumonia was like off the ground. And then that was the first one. And then the second one, he did it already when he was quite severely sick already. I mean, so many tumors in his lungs. But he did it for Janmashtami in 2022. He did it for 3 hours and 15 minutes, just full on kirtan for Janmashtami. That was very impressive. And yeah, I was the drummer for both, and I almost died, It was quite intense. Yeah, and then I realized he just went somewhere else. When the kirtan rolled around, it was just a different dimension. And then we were watching, he was in Vrindavan already, we were watching another Ishmaels, and he said, well, maybe I should go there. And I said, well, I still think you would do more ecstatic kirtans than all the people that even though they're healthy. I said, yeah, of course I would. He says, I'm not dead yet. He said, well, maybe I wouldn't be so active outside of my home, but for the kirtan I would still commute. And yeah, he confirmed it. He did this last kirtan that he did, was for Nityananda Triyodashi in 2023. And Pavan, you were there, no? It was still his style. It was not like now metal kirtan, this old man was barely doing it. It was like an hour of solid Kanana Swami style kirtan. Many times in between he said that he can't do Madhava style because Madhava is too controlled. He just goes like, he plays the melody and just like 2 notes, that's it. That's his style of just controlling the whole kirtan. But he said that with Madhava it works because he has this insane absorption, just fully absorbed, his mind doesn't wander. He just makes everyone fully absorbed. Just on the side note, I heard one time that Madhava was traveling somewhere and then I think he had a headache or something. Somebody gave him some pills. Those were not against headache, but they were sleeping pills. And after that he had to do a 2-hour kirtan. So he was there just like almost falling asleep, during his own kirtan. Somehow or other he pulled it off. And then all these people came to me, wow, such an amazing kirtan. It was just there struggling to stay awake. Yeah. Anyway. So yeah, in this way, Maharaj, he really went. Kirtan was his life. As many times he said. And he said that even when he was younger, he would say that a day was not a good day if he didn't sing. So he was always singing. But then he said, but now I don't feel like singing if it is not for Krishna. So that was his view. At the end, only Krishna was the one that mattered. Anything else was just felt flat for him. So in the same way, we can do kirtan with the pleasure of 45 minutes. I can sit sort of off the glasses. Just do it for the gods.
Prabhu, sorry, Prabhu, do you mind just sharing a bit more? Not a question as such, but I just wanted to know, like in the last few days of Maharaj was pretty restricted, like there was no entry for anyone as such.
Yeah.
But we were very fortunate to be with Maharaj.
Yes.
Is there anything that you would like to share with us?
Well, those days he just got absorbed. in just listening and listening to Prabhupada and discussing. He will discuss the pastimes of Krishna with his spiritual master, Jayadvaita Swami. And that was what he wanted to do, just get absorbed, sort of remove all the other distractions. So that's why also today is allowed to come. Yes, they didn't like it so much, but Maharaj wanted to be really careful to make his life successful. And by doing that, then he showed us with his own example how to actually do it. And then he had devotees do kirtan every afternoon. I don't know if you were there. We were not there. So devotees would come and they would do kirtan. I'm very happy about it. But mostly he just listened to Prabhupada and Prabhupada's kirtan. And then sometimes he would listen to the audiobook of Chaitanya Chaitanya. So that's what this is how he would get absorbed. Yeah. And then at the end, obviously, there was a roaring kirtan by Guru Govinda Maharaj while he was in this way. There was quite a few devotees in the apartment or in the room when he was leaving, so that was not so confidential. But otherwise, yeah, all the other things was that he was just getting absorbed, so it was not a lot. One interesting thing is, which he didn't like so much that it got known, but it was told by Jayadvaita Swami, so then he couldn't do anything about it, was that Jayadvaita Swami, he told him that now he's so sick, he doesn't need to trouble himself so much and chant all 16 rounds. At one point he told him that each beat counts as one round. But Maharaj refused to listen to that order because he said, well, I made all of my disciples promise to me that they will chant 16 rounds without fail. So how now I can just stop chanting 16 rounds and that way just disregard their promise as well. So then this story leaked out because Jayadvaita Swami told this story. And Maharaj learned that this story is going around. So he burst into the room where me and Jagannath Sutta and one other devotee were just hanging out. Maharaj just burst into the room. But this time he's quite weak already. But he's still able to walk around. So he usually was speaking softly in that period, but now he's like just fully fired. Just like screaming almost. It's like, who is the one who told this story? So Rupa Goswami is just there in Kadamba. I don't know if all of you know him, but he took the blame. Oh, Maharaj, I told the story. Maharaj just blasted him for like 5 minutes straight. I don't fully remember what exactly he said, but he fully blasted him. And Rupa Goswami is just like, he went into a shell. Yeah, sorry about that. And then Maharaj leaves. And about 2 minutes later, Jayadvaita Swami comes into the room. And we were all, oh no, now he's gonna put another source on top. And then Jayadvaita Swami goes, oh, it's okay, I calmed Maharaj down. I told him that actually I was the one who told this story in one of my classes, to all of his disciples. So then he asked, so what did Maharaj say to you? And then the son said, well, he can't tell me anything because I'm his spiritual master. So yeah, that was some pastime. But yeah, there's a few things that happen that I cannot tell anyone because I promised that I'm not telling. Anything else?
Maharaj gave you instructions on doing Harinam.
Yes. Well, I don't view it as it's transforming my life. I just view it still as I still stay Maharaj's servant. I just have to fulfill now this instruction and everything will stay the same. Because that's already, you're the servant of the spiritual master, that's already perfection. So why would we change anything? So in that way, it didn't transform my life. But now I sort of see that I will have to push on in this mood by myself, so to speak, without him being there and sort of dragging you along. But now just taking shelter of his instructions in this way, I can just sort of stay strong and not feel so much separation because I can associate with him and his instructions. So it took a while to actually sort of come to terms with it like that. But I think since last year's Glories, I'm kind of, okay, I know what to do now. Because it was quite an intense sacrifice. Sort of broadened my horizon of thinking what is possible and what is not possible. So that's what I can say. Okay, let's do some kirtan.